Well, I mean, when I started, engineering and recording was a very different landscape back then. I mean, there are technology changes, but there are concepts that remain the same. Right. So I recorded the background vocals and put together some parts, and I played them for him. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I love that." And I said, "Okay, so I'll get the guys to we'll replace these tonight." He goes, No. You do the rest of the song.
There it is. Oh my God!
What?
Wait, can I just remind everyone we're talking about Elton John, by the way?
Yeah.
So back to what I was saying.
What's up, friends, family, and fans? Welcome to Life. This is where we listen and inspire friends in entertainment.
And everywhere.
Yeah, because life happens to everyone. I am your co-host, Stone Stafford, with my ride or die.
Just when you do it, just rock with it.
Just ride with it.
Cut me out, just go with it. Johnny Vaughn, what it is, what
there
it
it
do.
is. Yo, so we are with Mr. Matt Still. I almost called you Mad Head. So first of all, there really is a Mad Head.
There is a Mad Head.
Do you know Matt?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Super
there really
producer,
is, there really is a Mad Head for real. But we were talking about my head 2 seconds ago, so I kind of got all discombobulated. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Matt Still. What up, Matt?
How's it going?
It is going great, man. Thanks for coming here with us. So Matt is here because Matt is one of those. Take it the right way. He is a classic engineer. And
old.
See, I didn't want to say that. I wasn't going to say that at all. But classic engineer, and I personally feel like it's important to have people of your caliber and your experience on the show because of where music is. Mm-hmm. And, and change happens. I get it. But, it's almost like when the ancestors teach the young ones the old language so that it doesn't die out. Yeah. I mean, not that you're like that, but we're not too far in age, first of all. So let's get that straight.
Yeah,
we're not too far off.
Well, I mean, when I started, engineering and recording was a very different landscape back then. I mean, there are technology changes, but there are concepts that remain the same from the time I first started to today.
Right. The fundamentals, right?
Fundamentals.
I just talked about that with someone. So before we dive into it, let people kind of know who you are, the highlights, right?
Yeah.
How you got here from then to here. Give us the highlights of your career.
Well, born and raised here in Atlanta. I'm a native. Oh. One of the few.
Dying breed.
Yes. Yeah. So, I was always in music, started studying classical piano at the age of 4. So I was always going to be in music in some degree or another. And what drew me to engineering was whenever my bands would go in to do demos, they always sounded awful.
They sounded terrible.
They sounded awful.
That's everybody's story.
Yeah. I didn't know how to do what the engineer was doing sitting behind the desk. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what any of the knobs did. And I was like, well, I just got to learn that so that I can just make it sound the way I want it to sound. Well, I went to Georgia State University to study commercial music and production and started interning at a studio right down the road.
Which one?
It was called Soundscape at the time. It is now Stankonia.
Oh, okay.
It was Soundscape, then it was Bosstown.
Boston. Ooh! Now that's when I got into the business. Yeah. It was Bosstown. Hey.
Well, so I started interning at Soundscape.
Okay.
And worked my way up from an intern to being an assistant engineer to becoming chief engineer there. I was there when Bobby bought the place. And
Bosstown was Bobby Brown's studio. For those who didn't know,
it was Soundscape Studios owned by a guy named John Merritt.
Okay,
and then he sold it to Bobby Brown.
Okay,
and then after Bobby, it went to Outkast.
Outkast.
And
now you said you moved from intern to engineer, right?
To assistant engineer. Yeah.
Is there anything specific you did to make that transition happen, or was it something that just kind of happened on its own, or were you like, I'm coming in as this intern and I want to become this, and then there were certain things you did to become that? And this would probably be more for people who are interns today.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you?
Well, as an intern, your responsibilities are take out the trash, sweep the parking lot, clean the bathrooms, vacuum, all the other stuff, anything that has absolutely nothing to do with music and engineering. That's your responsibilities. And after that, you might be able to hang out in a session,
right,
and watch what's going on and ask some questions. But you got to know when to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. You got to basically. I would just kind of sit in the back, and if they needed coffee, I'd go make coffee, come back, and just watch what's happening.
Right.
And when there was a break, I would talk to the engineer. I would talk to the assistant, whoever. Ask, why are you doing this? How are you doing this? What's this for? What's that for?
Right.
And the studio owner at the time, John Merritt, he had a policy which was very generous to the young staff and interns and assistants, that if there was no one in the studio and we wanted to go in and record, bring in somebody to record, we could come in off hours and record our own music.
Right.
So I would bring my own band in from like midnight to 6 a.m. And as long as we covered our own materials, which at that time was reel-to-reel tape, then we would then we could just record to our heart's content, and we would be up there all night long.
And that was the price that you paid by getting coffee, taking out the trash, and da-da-da-da-da.
That was my reward.
The reward, right?
Yes.
Because now, this generation now, they're all like, oh, y'all abusing us and you're taking advantage of us and blah, blah, blah. But people don't understand that there is a price for access.
Yes.
Right? There's a price for life experience sitting there at the seat of Jesus.
Can I be the young guy again at the table? And just
Did you just say what?
Can I be
Did you just say what?
I'm going to be the young guy at the table again.
If y'all
I
hear
see a little gray coming in your beard.
Yeah, don't
that's on purpose.
So you're not too
that's
far
spray.
behind.
Don't let them suck you in. Don't let them suck you in,
You're not
man.
too far behind me.
That's spray and stress.
All right, go ahead and speak, Father.
A lot of owners and a lot of people who were in position to have interns started to abuse that. The access was not rewarded as it. Now I was rewarded with that,
right?
But I saw people say, "Oh no, my interns are just interns. You never get a chance to sit." They couldn't even sit in session,
and that's fair.
That became an actual real thing.
Yeah,
so
no, that's fair.
That was
fair.
absolutely
that's
taken
fair.
advantage
so
of.
I shouldn't say that it didn't happen.
Okay,
but.
In my case, it didn't happen.
Right, and in the cases here, it doesn't happen.
And what I'm saying, here at Icon, it doesn't. And I mean, I'm going to say that here's an anomaly. But there was a time where it was fair, where if you came and you worked and you were focused and you got an opportunity. But then those opportunities started going away because people realized I got free labor. And that has also played a part in the mentality of some of the younger people, because they have not gotten no shots at studios when they've gone, they've taken out the trash for 2 years and still couldn't sit in on a session. Like, I've watched those things happen. So again, being the younger guy at the table, I have to speak to that because I didn't experience it personally. I got shots, but I watched kids get their careers crushed after giving it everything.
And you know what I'll say to that, and tell me if you agree, is if you are an intern and you're in that position, because it still happens, right? It is a great test for you and your character of what type of person you are. Because are you a hustler or not? Everyone wants to be like out here getting it, out here grinding, out here hustling. But at the end of the day, even though they might be abusing you, you're still in the building though, right? And hopefully there's some key people coming in and out of that building. So they're not barring you from having a conversation. They're not barring you if the guy has on the Eagles jersey, yo, did you see that Eagles game the other day? And then striking up that conversation and developing a relationship. No one's keeping you from doing that. And the ones that truly do have that hustle mentality and understand relationships, that's still an advantage they have that the one on the street doesn't have because they're in the building. Agree or disagree?
I agree. You as an intern, you cannot be a passive intern.
Amen.
You have to take your own initiative and figure out, learn the craft, understand what you know, what you don't know, and start to learn how to be an engineer. From my perspective, when I was sitting in that seat, I was like, okay, I need to learn. With the assistants, we would align the tape machine. I need to learn how to align the tape machine. I would get the chief engineer to show me. I said, hey, show me how to align the tape machine. Didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Right.
I practiced it and figured it out so that I knew how to align a tape machine. Go over the patch bay with me. Go over, the different kind of mics. Go over mic placement. Go over all this stuff with me. And I started to learn it, and then I worked my way up to be an assistant engineer. The first month that I was an assistant, I worked on the first TLC record.
Really?
And the first Arrested Development record.
Nice.
That was my first month as an assistant.
That's when you first met Ian Burke.
And Ian and Alvin Spites.
And Alvin's
Right on.
Uncle Al. Oh,
Yeah, man.
Al, rest
Alvin was the engineer on both of those projects, and I was his assistant for a bit.
Nice.
And he's one of the guys that I learned under. And he always taught me to make myself valuable.
Oof. Wow. Nice.
Make it so that the studio makes more money with me there than with me not there.
Woo!
All right, so Stone.
we preaching
Wait,
now.
Stop.
Need an offering plate.
Cut it. Stop. Stone likes to hear those catchphrases, and they feel good. And they sound. Stop it. Let me do something. Cut it. Let me.
I'm not going to sit and just let you berate me in silence.
Let me have half the mic. I mean, co-host and all that. No, it does. It sounds awesome, and I always put that in one of those categories of we say those words, but we never talk about what that means. So yeah, make yourself valuable. What were some actual things you did as a new engineer that made yourself valuable in that particular situation?
Well, I think for myself personally, I brought my musicality. I was a musician first. That was my goal, was to be the next Elton John. And ironically, that's who I do.
We're gonna get to that.
We're gonna get to that.
Yeah,
we're gonna get to that.
But we have one thing that I always tell people is that it's great to have dreams, but don't be so beholden to them. Dreams give you a direction to follow and allow you to take the next step. What's the first step you need to make towards that dream? Mm-hmm. Somewhere along the way, life is going to happen. It might take you in one direction or the other, but have a dream that moves you forward. Mm-hmm. In terms of what made me valuable, I was just always on top of things. I always tried to think ahead of the engineer. Mm-hmm. I always tried to make sure that the sessions ran efficiently. I just made sure that I was one step ahead. I've worked with some assistants who kind of sit in the corner reading a newspaper, magazine, sitting there on their phone nowadays. And I'll ask.
Yeah, you dated all of us by mentioning newspapers.
Yeah, I'll ask a question. I'll say, "Hey, can you do this?" And like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Back in my day, I was always focused on what was happening in the session. I was paying attention to the engineer, to the producer, to the artist, and I could tell where they were going. And so I would make sure that I was already in the process of doing what they were about to ask me to do.
Initiative.
Yeah.
There's that word. Okay, so now you're assistant engineer. You got to be in on the TLC and stuff, and then you're engineer. Let's continue on how you got here today, because you ended up working with some freaking big people, to say the least.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What was that journey looking like?
Back in 1993, I was already chief engineer at Bosstown.
Bosstown, okay.
And Elton John came in to do the Duets record. And because it was Elton John and he was one of my favorite artists ever, I was going to be even though I was the chief engineer, I was like, I'm going to be the assistant on this session. I'm going to assist. Because one, we wanted to make sure that everything went perfectly.
Mm-hmm. He had his own engineer?
Well, each song was a duet with a different artist, and there was a different producer. And so the producers had their own engineers that they would bring in.
Okay.
Like we did one with Tammy Wynette. We did one with RuPaul. We did one with Little Richard. We did
RuPaul?
RuPaul.
He had a duet?
Yeah. Don't Go Breaking My Heart.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, they did
I don't
a duet
think I knew that. Wow, okay.
Produced by Giorgio Moroder.
I didn't know that.
I don't know that. I don't know who Giorgio is. Maybe I know his work.
You gotta look him
I will
up.
look it up. Giorgio Moroder.
Google him.
You already know. Actually, DuckDuckGo now, but anyway.
Yes. So, so it was a different producer, different engineer, different guest artist on every song. So we would be in there working for a few days on a song, but then everyone else would leave and a whole new group of people would come back. And in some of those cases, it was people that Elton had never met before. Like they had spoken on the phone, but they'd never met face-to-face, kind of a deal. So I was the one constant along with Elton during those sessions, and it just kind of struck up a friendship. And the fact that I was a classically trained pianist kind of helped me to understand his way of thinking. And during that whole process, there were a couple of last-minute sessions thrown in with other artists that they were going to do in L.A. or New York or London or wherever, but they were like, hey, can you guys get here so we can just go ahead and knock this out? Well, they didn't have an engineer for some of those, so they just kind of turned to me and said, hey, can you do it? Yeah. And it was one of those, who's in the room? Are you available? Can you do it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the answer is always yes.
Always yes.
So I engineer on a couple of songs, just the tracking. I didn't mix or anything like that. It was just get the recording done, send the tapes off with the producer to do what they do.
Mm-hmm. Can I butt in this real quick? Yeah. Because anybody who reads credits, I've read yours. Mm-hmm. You can see everything that you've been credited as a producer, as an engineer. You've got background vocal credits on some of the Elton John stuff, don't you?
Yes.
How did that happen? We get the musicality stuff and how you end up in the sessions, but how do you end up singing on these records?
Let's get to that.
Oh man.
Let me finish this because in recording Elton John the duets record, as a pianist, I grew up sitting behind a grand piano playing, so I know what it sounds like to sit behind a piano. I know from that perspective, which is the perspective that he hears it from. So when I was engineering, I engineered it the way I wanted to hear it whenever I sit down at the piano. Okay. And I can listen to recordings and I can kind of tell if the engineer-producer is a pianist or not a pianist.
I was going to ask that. Do you think being musical or being a musician helps as an engineer?
It definitely helps.
Okay.
You don't have to be a musician, but it definitely helps. You can speak the language of music.
Right, okay.
And you can speak in musical terms. You can recognize musicality. You can understand how an instrument is supposed to sound. Yeah. Some people who record a piano, it might be kind of stuck off to the side, and it's like, that's not the way I do piano, because I sit down at it, I hear it very wide, I hear it, the high end, the low end, it's very spread out. And that's the sound I go for. And Elton sat down, he played the piano, he comes back and he goes, wow, I love the piano sound. And I was like, okay, there we go.
Makes
and
sense.
That was the beginning.
Yeah.
And over the next few years, Elton would come in to do like a one-off, like he did a thing with he did L.A. and Babyface came in, did a Christmas thing that he sang on, and there were a couple of other songs. Randy Newman did a song that he had Elton perform on, and then in 1996 Elton was going to write the musical Aida, but he was not going to do it at Boston. He was going to do it at a smaller studio, and so that's when I went freelance.
Nice.
And as far as the background vocals,
Yes.
when we were recording, it was The Captain and the Kid.
Okay.
And we were recording. I had been his regular engineer for quite a while at that point, and we had done a lot of recordings out in Las Vegas when he had a residency at Caesar's Palace. And at that time, Studio at the Palms was not there,
right.
And there were and there were no real studios that were capable of handling an Elton John session. There were a lot of small studios, like people might go in and do a demo session or something like that, but nothing that we could like bring his piano and the rest of the band and drums and guitars and just the entourage.
So he brought his piano to his sessions.
Oh yes, always.
Wow.
Yeah, it's always his piano that we bring in.
It's like how The Rock travels with his gym.
With his gym.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we had recorded. What we did when we needed to record in Las Vegas is we recorded in the Coliseum at Caesar's Palace.
Right on.
And so I just put together a mobile Pro Tools rig, and we would just record there in the Coliseum. And we loved the sound we were getting there on stage because it was this huge room, and I was like having fun. As an engineer, I was like, okay, I'm putting mics
everywhere.
I'm putting mics way back here. I'm not going to have to use a reverb. I've got natural reverb in this room.
And that excited you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm looking for today. Engineers where stuff like that, like, genuinely excites them.
Okay, well, spend the $15K to rent out Caesars and put people in that playground to excite them.
You think that would do that?
So yeah.
15K is a little low.
Man, I want people to remember that this is an area of music that it is exciting, and it does have value, obviously, but it does also have a future in it, if you make sense. We're in such an age now where everybody wants clout, everybody wants the notoriety.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their face in the front. And so that's why I feel like you have so many engineers now that want to be producers, or producers that'll be engineers. But like the true, just pure engineer, I mean, you're a producer as well, don't get me wrong, but...
I morphed into that.
Yeah, you morphed into it.
And I became the producer / engineer because I did have that musical background.
Right.
And when we were recording out in Caesars, he loved the sound, so he was like, let's do The Captain and the Kid in a live setting. So we set up at
that idea was born out of doing
so we set up at Center Stage.
Right on.
And recorded about 2/3 of the album at Center Stage.
Wow, that's great.
We rented it out. We had the whole venue to ourselves. I was in the room. There was no walls, no separation. I was in the room with the band, and I've even got some pictures where you can see my Pro Tools setup and the whole band, and we had obviously a set number of days, and they had some shows at Center Stage set up to come in shortly after we were done. So we kind of had a heart out, not only on Elton's side but also on the venue side. Mm-hmm. and we were getting close to the end, and there were some background vocals that we needed to record, and rather than sitting there and taking the time to try and figure out stuff with the guys in his band who normally sing all the background vocals, I stayed late one night, put a mic in front of me, and said, okay, I'm going to figure out these parts and see if he likes it, then they just got to learn the part and do it.
See where this is going.
So I sat there, just by myself. I told my assistant to go home. I was like, I didn't want him in there listening to me singing because I'm not a great singer, but because I feel like I'm a good engineer, I know how to utilize technology to my advantage.
Sure. Come on, man.
So,
pat yourself. It's all right. It's all right.
So I recorded the background vocals and put together some parts, and I played them for him, and he goes, oh yeah, I love that. And I said, okay, so I'll get the guys to we'll replace these tonight. He goes, no. You do the rest of the song.
There it is. Oh my God! What? Wait, can I just remind everyone we're talking about Elton John, by the way?
Yeah.
I don't want y'all to just get lost. This is Elton John, by the way.
Yeah. So I wound up doing the rest of the song. So there are a couple of songs where all the background vocals are me.
That's you.
Oh, come on, man. You're telling it so cool, but come on. What went through you when he said that? Like, was it fear, anxiety, excitement? Like what?
Well, no, it was. I mean, it was kind of excitement. I was appreciative that he liked the ideas that I did and that he liked the sound of it. I didn't want to piss off the guys in the band because that was their gig. but they're all very good friends of mine, and they were all cool, So it wasn't like it didn't turn out to be where I was stepping on anyone's toes. But
was it one of those things where in the moment you don't realize how big it is because you're like, oh man, this is just a super cool thing, and then afterwards you have the shock. It's like, yo, I just did that. Was it that kind of deal?
It was kind of like that.
Okay,
yeah, that makes sense.
But I had worked with him. I had been working with him for many
so
years.
long.
At that point.
Yeah, that's true.
At that point, it was already almost probably a decade at that point. That
all right. So y'all have okay.
So we had a very good, comfortable working relationship.
Okay.
I felt I would never have done that early on in my career with him. And I had worked up to the point to where, at that point, I'd already worked my way into being a producer for him as well.
Okay.
There was enough trust there that he came to me and said, he goes, you're going to start co-producing with me on everything that I do. And I was like,
that's just amazing.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that sense of comfort to do that. And, there are times where I do stuff and he goes, nope. And I go, okay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Delete.
But that one or those two, those are the ones that matter, though.
Yeah,
that's it.
So we have a very good rapport and working relationship, and I have an idea of what he likes to hear and the way he likes things to sound. So, it's not I'm not necessarily guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I started to do some vocal work for him as well.
I want to do this. I want an apology. I can do this because as someone who I'm a storyteller, I build stories for a living. I can admit when I didn't see a dope story like that coming. So thank you for shutting me up to allow you to build to it because I almost ruined it by trying to get to the part that I've just been excited to ask you about for 2 days now.
Yeah.
Elton John's Elton John. I mean, we can talk about that for days. Right. When you look at your discography, the names are so vast. I mean, Elton John, Rod Stewart's on there. Chameleon there is on there.
Right.
We already talked about TLC.
The diversity is
awesome.
I
mean, Outkast.
Yeah.
A lot of engineers work with a lot of people, but a lot of people don't repeat work with a lot of people. You've been able to cross genres and be effective and efficient with a sound that sticks.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I was never able to do that. I found my niche, R&B, hip hop, some pop stuff was kind of it. I tried to do some country rock stuff, couldn't make it. The sound just didn't. Like my ears just didn't feel it or hear it the right way. What was that thing that made you flow across those boundaries?
Well, growing up, I was always listening to pop and rock.
Okay.
The Who, Led Zeppelin, I was blasting those records. When I wanted to become an engineer, I wanted to learn how to do pop and rock stuff. But in Atlanta in the early 90s, it was all R&B and rap. Yeah. There was some, but there wasn't a whole lot of rock going on. Mm-hmm. And when you were working at a studio, it was all R&B and rap sessions. Right. So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to learn how to do that. I didn't know thing one about rap music. I hadn't really been listening to it. Didn't know the R&B scene, but I learned how to engineer it. And
How what does that learn how to engineer? Because even here at the studio, I'll have someone, they'll say, give me an engineer who really knows R&B. Give me an engineer that knows pop. Give me an engineer that knows trap. What does that mean that knows it? What is it that you're knowing?
The first thing that I had to learn when I was engineering and mixing within R&B and rap is low end.
Right.
How to manage the low end.
How to blow an Augsburger.
Yeah. And rock and pop have started to incorporate some of that low end now.
Right.
But back then, it was not like that. You know. So you didn't have 808s on country records and rock records.
Right.
Like you can find them now.
Right.
So it was just kind of understanding the genre and and basically just trying to be a sponge as much as I can to learn as much as I could about the music, about everything about engineering. And there are a lot of concepts that it doesn't matter what genre you're recording or mixing that will travel.
It'll translate
to whatever genre. I mean, I've done everything from R&B and rap to rock to country to jazz. I've recorded orchestras. I've done all kinds of things. So I do have a very broad spectrum of experience in terms of genres. But it gets down to making yourself valuable, being the person who can get the job done. With Outkast, you may not know it, but the song "Bombs Over Baghdad," the keyboards at the beginning, that's me playing.
Did not know that.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
I believe you. I did not know that.
We were in the studio. Andre knew that I played classical piano, and it was the very last thing that we put on. The song was pretty much done, but it was the last thing that we put on at the top. He knew I play classical piano, so he said, "Play some Beethoven shit."
That sounds
like what Dre was saying.
Yeah.
So we found a patch sound on his keyboard that we liked, and so I just started playing along, and I kind of found that little riff, and then we put it at the top, and that was the beginning of Bombs Over Baghdad.
Nice.
And if you listen to the interludes on Stankonia, I'm on there talking.
You're talking.
That's me.
See, now I got to go back.
You gotta go back and listen.
This is hilarious.
Listen for the painfully white guy.
Painfully white guy.
So
That's me.
I wanted to ask about that too. So
And that was initiative. That was me. That was seeing they needed something because I knew it when we were doing those interludes. I knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
But I was like, they were like having this person going and that person going there. No, man, you're not doing it. I was like, hold on, guys. I hit record. I walked in and I just started doing some shit. They're like, that's it. That's what we want.
Nice.
So it was just taking the initiative. And they could say no, and then, okay.
Right.
And then you take it off.
And to balance it too, especially for new ones, like you earn the right to take that initiative. Like you've worked with these people enough to where it got to the point where you can do that, right?
Well, also with Outkast, I don't know that I had worked with them a whole lot at that point to say that I had earned the right, but I had worked with enough people to recognize the window of opportunity.
Boom. Yeah.
To recognize their openness. Because there are some people, even today, like you're talking about, some sessions you keep your mouth shut, some sessions I still run across that day. There are times I come into a session, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to hit record.
And that's reading the room, right?
Yeah, you read the room.
And that comes with experience.
Yeah.
And honestly, and time.
Yeah.
And and again, so this is my thing with the younger ones is they want to fast forward so much. And there's just some things you just can't. Those little X factor things, it only comes with time. You have to be in 100 sessions before you become proficient at reading the room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just what it is. And you just have to accept that, and just keep going.
Yeah.
You just said something that was very interesting to me, that you come across sessions where you just hit the record button and sit there. That means that you're still tracking? Is that what I'm hearing?
If my schedule is open and someone calls me to record, to mix, to produce, I'm available for whatever.
You'll track.
I will track.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, yes. I swear nowadays, as soon as they go to that whole mix thing, tracking I don't track anymore. I'm a mix engineer.
I admittedly I did that in the early stages of my. But when I first started shifting into live, I got to a point to where I stopped tracking, and it wasn't because I was above it. I just got tired of dealing with the psychological aspect that came with being a therapist on top of having to, like, that part was just too much for me. Right. Just let me get in there and do, because I too am a musician and a creative. I want to just get to the creative stuff. That's why I stopped. When I got to the live aspect of it, it completely went away because I was mixing all the time at that point. And then I would get calls to track sessions, and it sounded like that. I was like, man, I'm on tour or whatever. And it just sounded like I was being, but I was like, no, like I'm too busy.
Prince needs me.
But there are people that, it wasn't Prince. It wasn't Prince. I wish it was Prince. My first big tour was training Rob Thomas, which was cool. I was an assistant on that. And then I did some stuff with some USO bands that were really cool that I actually got to mix front of house for. And that was a pivotal point in my career to where I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue to try to split time and still moonlight on one side or the other, or am I going to dive head first and do all of these shows and do all these tours and become a front of house mix engineer?
Well, the difference is like what Matt said. He said, if I'm available, if I have time, I still do it.
And the reason why I asked the question is exactly for what he said. There's so many people that they just write it off. Like, this is no longer a part of what I do anymore. Now, the question that I'm leading to, because I can get long-winded when I'm excited about sitting to somebody who's as legendary as you are, forgive me, is does the answer yes or no depend on not necessarily so much if your calendar will allow it, but who the name is? Like, if Elton wants you to track, maybe you say yes. If it's the new...
With Elton, I do everything.
Okay.
I track it, I mix it, I produce it. I'm like, on those projects, I'm the only name as an engineer, recording or mixing.
Now, when you say produce, right? Does that always mean you're playing something? Because in pop and rock and country, right? Oftentimes the engineer is the producer, right?
Producer, the word producer, it means a lot of different things depending upon genre. If you're in R&B and rap, producer generally means the songwriter as well. Rock, it's not necessarily, in pop, it doesn't necessarily mean the songwriter. Right. It could be more of a technical producer. Okay. Like Elton still writes all the songs. He's his own songwriter. No one needs to write a song for him.
Does he still work with the guy? Remember, like, he did the melodies and the guys did.
Bernie Taupin. Bernie still does the lyrics for him. Now he does other things where like some of the musicals that he's done, there might be someone else who did for that kind of stuff. And so for some of the films, like Tim Rice did The Lion King and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he writes the music and someone else writes the lyrics for the albums. It's always Bernie. And Elton will go in and write the song, and he'll write it within like 30 minutes. He'll sit down with the lyrics, nothing done, start just kind of stream of consciousness, trying to figure out a melody, and then all of a sudden.
So it starts with the lyrics. Well, it probably changes, but most of the time it starts with the lyrics.
Yeah, no, it always starts with the lyrics.
Wow,
it's a little backwards from
normally, especially when I write, it's always melody first, and then I come up with the story and the lyrics.
And that to me, I think, is one of the unique things about their relationship, in that you listen to some of the musical arrangements of some Elton songs, especially some like early stuff, is that it's not necessarily a traditional song format, in the way they compose stuff, because he's Bernie's lyrics are not so block formatted and so perfectly aligned in terms of the number of syllables and rhyme. He's not beholden to rhyme. He will rhyme, but he's not beholden to it. And sometimes that will stretch Elton's
phrasing and all
his creativity to try and find something that works for the lyrics that Bernie gave him.
And that might be the holy grail answer for a lot of people as to why they find it so hard. They're like, I'm a poet, I write poems. I'm like, that's not songwriting. I think that's still different than writing songs. Because even if you're doing lyrics, there's still some kind of a flow. There's still some kind of a structure there. You know what I mean? It's not just poetry. Yeah. And I get that all the time. So, I do lyrics all the time. I'm a poet. I'm like, not quite the same.
But it can be, though. This is a prime example of it.
Sure. Yeah.
In the rap world, Philadelphia Freeway was not one of my favorite rappers for a very long time because his rhyme scheme and structure felt more poetic than it felt like rapping. And then when I finally started to kind of catch how he was piecing things together, it started to make more sense. And then musically, producers would go in, and some of the call and response stuff and the instrumentals will be based off of what was built off of that, which you hear a lot of in some of that stuff. You can tell that the music was built later because. Wait, what?
I just haven't heard anybody call him Philadelphia Freeway in years.
Years. So I did it on purpose. So the quick story on why I do that. I was talking to a kid one time, and I was kind of telling a similar story, and I brought him up, and I just said Freeway, and I was like, "Who's Freeway?" And if you Google Freeway, you never find him. So if you put in Philadelphia Freeway without writing Freeway rapper, it'll actually come.
Yeah,
up
when you said, I was like, what?
So that's an actual.
Like, okay, Mr. Wells.
That's a conscious thing to point out that when I say Freeway, I'm not just talking some random.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But that structure comes out of an artist being able to sit down and create from a musical standpoint with a blank canvas, so to speak, with only lyrics as a guide, and you can put phrasing kind of wherever you want to. Did that make it difficult for you as a producer or a co-producer in those situations to find a gap to fill when you were called on to do certain things?
No, I don't think so. He writes this. He'll sit down. He'll write the song, and he'll start with nothing, and he'll have the song written and arranged within 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll get the band in. We start working on, how the song starts, where there's going to be a break, how it's going to end, all that kind of stuff, and then we start getting takes. And once we get his part down, we get the piano and the vocal done. He'll usually take off.
Right.
He'll usually leave, and we have overdubs. We've got to do more guitar overdubs. There might be some drum overdubs we need to do. There might be bass or something, percussion.
And these are all at your discretion as an engineer.
Engineer,
producer.
As a producer.
Producer, yeah, that's production actually.
And he'll just leave. He'll say, okay, yeah, just finish it off. And he'll come the next day, and I will have had to have worked with the band and put together the rest of the remainder of the
That's
song.
what I was asking. Was does it make it difficult as far as I guess I left out that part from an expectation standpoint from him when he does this and says, Matt, go do your thing. And then
there's always you never want to disappoint him.
Right.
And I always try to keep things as fresh as possible. One thing that I never do in any song that I've ever done for him is I never work from a template. So many engineers and producers they'll have this template where they import everything, and it's like everything's the same from song to song.
Yes.
And I don't do any of that.
Now we're talking to the younger ones.
Yeah. Because if I pull in the same things every single song, then I'm kind of falling back on the same sounds, the same effects, the same whatever. And so I just start from scratch, and I try to think about, okay, what does this song need, and I try to put blinders on as to the other songs that we've worked on, and I try to focus on just what does this song need versus, let's revisit this same sound that we used in another song or something.
If for no other reason you being here, that was it. Like, thank you, because seriously, because I needed a way for it to be verbalized, because I always tell people that this is a craft that you build. And yeah, Uncle Stone, I'll come off harsh and just call everybody lazy. But at the end of the day, it kind of is it. But you don't learn from just someone calling you lazy. And the thing is, it's a craft. And to hear that this well-accomplished guy who's worked with, and we want to talk about just some of your best sessions you've had, but we're, a three-time Grammy nominated, a Grammy-winning, worked with the top people, and he's like, yeah, I don't use templates, and here's why. And it sounds to me like, oh my gosh, so there's effort and there's work and there's time put into this thing, AKA craft. And I truly just feel that's missing. And then the Gen X's, the millennials and Gen Z's always come with but that was then and blah, blah, blah. Now we're going back to what he first said about the fundamentals, right? Yeah. I feel those fundamentals are missing a lot today.
I don't disagree with you on that. I don't disagree with you on that.
People still do it.
They are.
But it's just missing.
I want to ask you this, Matt. No ifs. I love what you said about starting from a fresh place, because when you have the time to do it, think that's amazing. Do you feel that's the only way, or do you have some of your peers that do work from templates?
You know, I don't want to ever say that a certain way doesn't work for someone.
That's all you had to say. Thank you very much.
That's what works for me.
We all know there's no only way.
Well, it's just like I look at songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Elton writes a song in 30 minutes. Like you look at the classic songs.
Rod will take a month.
He writes them so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, your song, Rocket Man. You know, Daniel, all those, you know, Someone Saved My Life Tonight. All those songs were written within a half an hour.
That's amazing.
You know, you work with the guys in Outkast, the songs evolve over days and sometimes weeks.
Yeah.
Which way is right?
And that's all.
You listen to.
That's it.
You listen to the end result, and they're both great songs. So it's like, well, who cares
Who cares how?
About the process now? But for me, in order for me to keep try and keep it fresh with what I do, because I'm responsible as the producer and the engineer,
right,
to try and keep things sounding
fresh,
relevant and fresh.
Yeah.
That's my choice not to use templates.
And I love it.
Things.
The only reason I did that is because Stone's soapbox is so much higher than everybody else.
Whatever, bro. No, because you do what everyone does. You say what I didn't say.
I didn't say. I just asked a question. I asked Matt a question.
Or you asked a question of something that I did, of a point that I didn't make.
That's it. No. Well, so the reason I asked it for this reason. So let me talk to my generation and below now. I'm a template fanatic. The reason being is because a lot of times I don't have time. And I mean, I'm not in the studio a lot, so a lot of times my stuff is live. So if I'm on an SD9 or whatever, yes, I have templates that I pull from, especially if it's a known artist that I've worked with before. And I'm in an arena or a venue that I haven't been in a while, but I have something that's close. I'm recalling stuff to get close.
Well, live may be a different thing.
It is. It's a different world. It's a different world. But even when I was still in the studio, I did the same thing. Now, I will admit, there were a lot of times, like even like the last time I was really in the studio, we were working with Cash Out. And this has been 10 years now. And I started with templates on just about everything. And I can admit that by the time we got through some stuff, I had scraped everything that I had imported and in essence started from scratch. But had I not had a starting point, I wouldn't have had some type of creative spark. So all I'm offering up is that some people are divinely gifted, as you like to say, who can start from nothing and sparks. And some of us need a little kick before we get back.
Here's my thing. My thing is I agree with all of that. Okay, this is all I'm saying.
Okay.
Because I work with them every day. We have some people where a template is just what you do.
Okay.
I just have a template, period. And now I'm not sitting there saying it's wrong or right. There are some times when that template will slap, like you came out with a bop. But don't have the mentality going in that this is how you do it. It's a creative process. It's creative. Like I have artists that come in here and they want to be an Elton. They want to be exploratory, but they don't know how. What if the engineer came in like, you know what, we're going to scrap this template today. Let's start from scratch, whatever. And that engineer took them down that path, down that road. And then all of a sudden they discovered parts of themselves they didn't even know was there, thanks to the producer or engineer. And then now you have this new side of an artist breathing fresh air into what they're doing. And then you have this engineer who's like, okay, you're my guy from now on. Now we have a Matt and an Elton John relationship. You see what I'm saying? All I'm saying is there's so many possibilities creatively that nowadays we keep on the shelf. Like I said, I don't have time and everything, so I got to get it done. I get it. There's time for that. But then sometimes when you just sit down and you craft it, man.
I 100%
you craft it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And I miss it. I miss it.
I did all of that to get you to do that.
Yes, you did, Sensei. Shut up. All right. We're going to put Elton as a standard. Any other favorite sessions in particular? 2 questions. Any favorite sessions of yours, most memorable sessions, particular? And then 2, are there any artists that you're like, God, before I leave this earth, if I could just work with this person? Are there any of those?
One of the more memorable ones, I wasn't an engineer, this was back when I was an assistant, was probably James Brown.
Uh-oh.
Got to work with him. Oh, yeah.
What does a James Brown session look like?
Yeah.
This was after he had gotten out of jail, and he was very reflective on his time in prison and how it changed him. And
Things were cleaning up.
And he was like, that was the best thing that ever happened to him. And he liked to, give advice to the younger people, me being one of them in the room, about, life decisions. And it was really cool to see him at that period of his life.
In that space.
And it was on the Universal James record. And Jazzy B from Soul to Soul was the producer on the track. And so we did two songs that they came over to do. And I was the assistant on that, and just kind of having the opportunity to kind of sit back and watch him work. As a producer and engineer, when you're in the session, a lot of times you're focused on what you're doing. So sometimes you don't get to sit back and appreciate the moment.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Because you've got shit to do.
Yeah.
As an assistant, I was in that position. I was able to kind of sit back and go, "Wow, I'm sitting here with James
freaking Brown.
James freaking Brown we're recording vocals, and I'm hearing his raw vocal.
It's made some hair stand up right there a little bit.
That was probably one of the cooler sessions. Outside of the Elton stuff, there's a lot of cool moments with
Sure.
Elton.
Did any of the raw 2-inch stuff go missing by chance?
Hell no.
Okay.
Of course they didn't.
You know what?
Just checking.
There have been.
Just asking.
There have been projects that I've worked on where things have leaked, and I've been asked, did it come from me?
Sure.
I have too much to lose to let something leak that I have worked on. Nothing. I have never let anything get out. There was something of Elton's that wound up on the internet somewhere over in Europe, and I told them, they asked me, and I said, I guarantee you where it is. I said, find the CDs that I gave Elton for him to listen to, the mixes that we did. I said, I bet you won't find it, because I bet he left it in the hotel
In a hotel
room
somewhere.
where he was at.
Okay.
Because it's like I said, I just have too much to lose with my career. For what little bit of clout that I might gain from, oh man, look what I got to work on. Look what I'm hearing. It's too costly to not be on top of security of now files.
Yeah.
Back then it was 2-inch reels.
Right.
So it was harder to leak stuff back then than it is now. But yeah, no.
It became an epidemic at one point, obviously, within the last 10, 15 years, because engineers thought that was the way that they could get something else out of the situation.
Oh, sure. There's one in particular. One name in particular. That shall not be named. The dream artist, though. The dream artist. So the artist that he hasn't worked with, or before he leaves this earth would love to work with.
Yeah.
Oh, the dream artist.
If there is one.
Probably Beck.
Ooh.
Really?
Yeah.
Why Beck?
He seems to be an artist that crosses a lot of different genres and tries to have a lot of different influences into his music. From one album to the next, there's a lot of different. They're very different albums. It's never like the same album over and over again.
Right.
I've really enjoyed his music.
Would it be from an engineering standpoint, or would you want to be a producer, or do you care what capacity it would be in?
I don't know that I necessarily have a preference. I want to be in the room.
Yeah.
I love the process of making albums.
Yeah.
I love being in the studio and recording and mixing and that whole creative process. And when you're in the room and you're one of the first handful of people to hear a song that goes on to be a mega hit, those are the moments. That's the goosebump moment is when you sit there and you realize, okay, this is something here, and just being in the room, being a part of the process, that would be awesome.
Right on.
I had an intern here, Emily. She's actually engineered over across the street. That was her whole thing. Like, she just loved. She's like, I just want to be a part of the process of the creation of the song and of the album. Like, she genuinely got a high off, and hopefully she still does. But genuinely
She does.
A high off of that.
Yeah, she still does.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that, though? I retired from one aspect of my career last year. Not that I lost passion for it, it just had so many other things going on. But even before I left, it became work to find that. It used to be easy. I used to go to work and there was just a thing that I just loved being in the building. I used to love cracking the mic. Even when I was still in the studio, I used to just love the lights on my desk used to make me happy. I'm an LED freak. And the way I would turn my system off and turn it on just to watch the power up sequence sometimes. I'm that ridiculous. But with live stuff, there's something different every single show. Every venue is completely different. Every console is completely different. So I have these things that can help me kind of stay fresh. How do you stay fresh? How does that desire to want to stay in the room continue?
You know, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that because I don't think it's ever left me.
Okay.
Nice.
You know,
Yeah.
when now, yes, there are some sessions that are a job.
Sure.
You know, like any career, any job, there's sessions where it's like, okay, I'm getting a paycheck, and there are other sessions where it's like, man, this is what I do it for. You know, when I go into the studio with someone like an Elton, you know, I try to leave my ego at the door, and I try to just make sure that, you know, I create the most creative environment for the artist that I can. You know, and that's the fun. And when something comes out of those sessions that I think is amazing, whether it gets chart success or not, there have been a lot of songs that I've worked on. I'm like, man, that's an awesome song. I can't wait for that to go out. It's gonna be great.
Happens.
And it just kind of fizzles
out. Yeah.
It's still a great song, and it was still a great a session that I loved. It's just kind of part of who I am, you know. When I have days off, I'll go down in my studio and tinker around in Pro Tools on stuff. That's my hobby.
Right on.
Music is my business and my hobby.
Right on.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, even on my days off, I go down in my studio and do shit.
I was going to ask you, if you weren't doing music, what else would you do?
I'd be doing
Sounds like
music.
I'd be doing music.
Can I do a stone real quick? Because these are really cool when he does these. I'm going to try to be as eloquent with you as you are.
Don't hurt yourself.
I asked that. I know, I'm going to try. I told you, his steps are tall. The thing that I heard in what you just said, because the question I asked was designed to be difficult to answer, because it's not an easy question to answer for anybody. But what you didn't say it so much the music. You said that creating the environment was almost what you live for. And then if something comes out of it, you were a part of it based off of that. So that creating part is the journey of the situation. And I'm a real big proponent of teaching the kids that I mentor that getting to where you're wanting to go isn't what you're trying to do. Learning how to enjoy that process is what you want to do. Yeah. And I think you summed up what I was kind of digging at with that question, and then you just magically spit it out because you've been pulling magic out of it the whole time. is that enjoying that process of building that environment and then just being a part of it is fulfilling whether or not you get chart success or not. And that is the journey. Yeah. Because if you chase the chart success, everything could fizzle out. That's been my whole musical career. We've been almost, and then never. And but the process was always enjoyable.
If you're chasing chart success, if you're chasing Grammys and nominations and all that other kind of stuff, you're not being honest with the process. Mm-hmm. And you're not staying true to the art. This is about art. This is about creativity. This is about expression. You're creating something that hopefully will connect with someone on a deep level. You know, when I was growing up, it's like I listened to the music that I grew up loving. It's because it touched me in a way that I had not been touched before. You know, I was like, I connected to it lyrically, musically. It said things. It could verbalize the way I was feeling, and I was like, that's what I'm feeling. That's exactly. They just said exactly what I'm feeling. And so I was able to connect to it. And when you try to do something thinking about, okay, we want to have a top 10 hit, or we want to get a Grammy nomination out of this, you've almost already shot yourself in the foot before you even started.
And that's how every session becomes a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have a couple of engineers here where they're good, but you can tell they don't love being in a room. They don't love serving the artist.
Just
You can
make
tell they don't
great
love
music.
it. Because every time I turn around, the artist is getting on their nerves. Like, they don't know this. They don't. I said, but that's why you're in the room, dog. But they're concerned with, because they see it, if it's not going to lead to a Grammy, not going to lead to my notoriety to work with bigger and better person or to get my tracks on, then it's a waste of my time. That's how it's seen. And I see this, and I've had these talks before, and I feel bad for them because I think they're missing a whole lot of this beautiful thing that we're doing.
Well, they are. They're missing the part he just said.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the greatest engineers, the greatest producers, the greatest writers that I've been able to be around have a story like that.
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah.
artist or some record or some song from some period that touched them, that helped them resonate with the craft.
I think Leslie
And
shared a story.
He
like
did.
that
He had one just
here
like it too. The computer that he had that they gave him. And then there was a record. So I can't remember what the song was, but that computer
And
was a
Simone.
big deal of it. Yeah,
Simone
both
had a
of them.
story. Yeah.
But that's a big thing, and I will agree with you on that. Like, a lot of the younger guys that I run into now don't have an album that they can call back to that they would just listen to all day.
Yeah.
There isn't a credit book that they went through and then they researched every engineer, every producer that was on there to study what they did. But they enjoy the technical aspect of Pro Tools,
Right.
which is, I mean, it's fine, it's cool, but I think that you almost are shooting yourself in the foot thing. You create a ceiling when you don't have some spark of a passionate place to pull from to drive everything else that comes, which leads me to my next question.
Yeah, I got one more, and that was the rapid fires.
We talk about this being an art form and everything. We all know art don't always pay. So that passion don't always pay. Art don't always pay.
To every creative child.
Even my mom told me at one point, she's like, you need to have a backup plan. And I was one of those kids, like, if I have a backup plan, I'm already planning to fail. Like, I was that kid.
I had the exact same conversation with my parents.
Okay.
My mother, I started out at Georgia Tech studying electrical engineering.
Right on.
Oh.
Went there for a couple of years. Realized I don't want to do this. This ain't it for me. Because growing up, I was always kind of like, there's always this kid in school who was like the musician.
You do look like an electrical engineer. Though. I will say that.
Yeah. Well,
you can still be one if you want.
I can still be one. But growing up, I was the kid who played the piano, and I was the accompanist for the chorus, and I was always the musician dude.
Yeah.
And then going to study music, I remember I would look at it. I was like, okay, well, what are my options as a classical pianist? Because that's what I studied. And I was like, well, okay, I've always been good at math and science. Let me just go to Georgia Tech. So I got in Georgia Tech and started doing electrical engineering.
Now wait, let's not gloss over that, because you just said I'm just going to
go to Georgia Tech.
You don't just go to Georgia Tech.
I know I'm going to get it. I'm just going to Georgia Tech. It's not that they choose me. I decide that I'm going to go.
I gave Tech a call. I'm starting in the fall.
Well, okay, I glossed over it. I filled out an application and I got accepted. Okay, so
Cakewalk. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's funny. That was a good point. We got to have people like aspiring and
Seriously,
just like where's the application at?
Yeah.
Give it.
So you're at Tech. You make the decision.
So I realized, okay, this is not what I want to do. So I transferred over to Georgia State, and my mother wanted me to major in business and minor in music production, and I was like, no, because if I have a safety net, I'll fall into that safety net.
Right.
If I have no safety net, I'll find my way. And
Yeah.
Do you think going to college for music helped?
I went to school for music production, not for music itself. It wasn't. I wasn't studying. It wasn't at the time. It was not in the School of Music. It is now in the School of Music over at Georgia State. But at the time, it was not in the.
Was it like a tech thing? Was it like electronic music back then? And just put in the tech department or something?
Well, yeah, I don't even remember what school technically it was under, but it was. I mean, we didn't even really have a recording studio. They would work with a studio. There was a place called Magic Lantern, which had a guy who was a composer, and he taught the class.
Right.
Great composer, great guy, but he knew how to work his studio.
Right.
It was set up for him.
Right.
To where it's just like, okay, you plug into that, and that mic always shows up at this fader. No patching, no nothing, whatever.
Right.
And
this was at the college level.
this was at the college. Well, this was I'm pretty old.
this
This was a long time ago.
is before Atlanta became.
This was a long time ago.
I'm sorry.
This was in the infancy of these types of programs.
I hear you. I understand.
Where they were still trying to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
It was a new thing. They weren't even sure what curriculum they needed. It was kind of a guessing game.
Gotcha.
at that point.
I forgive me. I got to remember.
No. But I was already interning over at Soundscape, now Stankonia, and I was already kind of working my way up to being an assistant engineer. I wasn't quite an assistant engineer yet, but I was working my way up. But by the time we got into my recording classes at Georgia State, I knew more about engineering than the guy who was teaching the class.
Yeah, I can see that.
So when I went through, it was a very different type of dynamic and system.
That's fair.
Now you go through, they have people who know what they're doing now teaching these. There are so many programs around. I mean, now even here within Atlanta, you got a program at UGA, you got one at Kennesaw State, you got SAE, you've got Art Institute, you've got SCAD, you've got Georgia State. There's so many options.
Had Art Institute.
Okay, you had Art Institute. That is correct. I forgot about
Yeah,
that. Well, there's AIM now. AIM is still around. So, there are a lot more options for kids coming up nowadays. So I think they are going to learn a lot more than they would than I did when I went through. And I don't want to diminish my time in school, because I did learn a lot of great things, and I met a lot of great people there, and that I still keep in contact to this day. But I will say that, with all of being an engineer and going to school to learn how to be an engineer, it's not like going to get a law degree.
Right.
If I go to Harvard Law, or Emory Law, and I come out with that degree, I could walk in with that degree and go, I'm an Emory Law grad. I went to Harvard Law, and I'll be able to get a job at some big law firm based off of that piece of paper. Yeah. If you walk into a studio, I'm a grad of the Art Institute, or I'm a graduate of SAE. Let me mix your record. They'll go, make me a fucking cup of coffee. That's all you can do.
You're like, what? You couldn't get into tech?
No one has ever asked me what school I went to. They want to know what projects, what's the last album I did.
Yeah.
I'll say this too. From my experience, sometimes the school that some of these kids have gone to has hindered them. I had a stretch of time where we would toss the resumes from 3 schools in the trash the second we saw the name, because we knew that they were coming in with that type of attitude. I came out of the school, let me go to work.
And I've seen that. When I was chief engineer over at Bosstown, and we had our intern program, and we would get people from different schools, and we would have people come in who wanted to just go straight into. They weren't into. I remember one guy coming. I'm not into interning. I'm ready to be an engineer. I'm like, no, you're not.
Right.
Thank you, but have a nice life.
Exactly.
But that, I would also get other students from that very same school who were just willing to do anything.
Yeah.
You want me to empty the trash? Fine.
Yeah.
I got a car. I'll go get food. I'll go do whatever.
Yeah.
And it does suck that at one point, a couple bad apples spoiled.
Yeah, because you did always say it was the school, but it wasn't. It was the individual.
Sure.
Yeah.
With that, did you ever hit the wall? This is the shortest question I'm going to ask you all day.
Okay.
I finally got my fangirl under control. Did you have a moment where you were like, "This isn't going to be it. I can't." You ran out of money. You didn't. Rent's due in a couple weeks. I don't know if I can make this music industry thing work. I have to make this engineering thing. I'm going to have to go get a real job. Was there a point where you had that reflective moment, or were you one of the lucky ones that?
I was lucky in the sense that I got into this very early, and I think it was a different era when I got into it, and so as soon as I started assisting, it really hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
There are peaks and valleys in the music industry and what you do, and there were lean months where it's like, man, there's not a lot of work going on, but then there are some years where it's like, I don't have enough hours in the day to finish everything. You need to, one thing you have to learn as an independent contractor, as a freelancer, you have to learn how to think of your finances on at least a quarterly basis, if not a yearly basis, rather than some people thinking weekly. Oh, this week I've made this much. This week I've made this much. This week I've made this much. Because some weeks you're gonna have some big checks coming in some weeks, and then you got no checks coming in. So you need to think long term, and you can't spend. You make 10 grand this day, you can't go spend like you're going to make 10 grand the very next day.
Yep.
You've got to budget, you've got to learn finances, and you've got to learn to live as a freelancer. And that can be tough. That can be a hard place to be sometimes. I've always been able to make my rent. I haven't had to, have a second job, and I know I've been fortunate with that. I know a lot of people do.
Haven't had to sell your body down on Lakewood.
Yeah, didn't have to do that.
Okay, all right.
Didn't have to go sell my blood or anything like that. Or make little mats or whatever.
Yeah. I didn't realize what I was.
But yeah, it's learning. To me, that's more about learning how to manage your finances, which is the business side of things, which we never like to really have to think about. We just want to be creative. We just want to be in the studio and do the creative thing. But then you've got to manage your finances. You've got to pay your taxes. You've got to put enough aside so that when you get a check from a label, they're not taking out taxes. So you got to write every year. You got to write a check to the government. You're not getting a refund. You're paying.
So your life is like, here's Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
you've got to learn how to manage your household finances.
Yeah.
And
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna wrap real quick. What I want to know, what are you working on now? And touch on Placement Music too, if you can.
Placement Music is a company owned by Tammy Hurt, and she gets music placed in televisions and films.
Now, are you a partner in that?
No, she owns the company, but I am considered a creative consultant with that.
Okay.
So like I have worked with her on some projects. Like there was some shows that they got some songs placed in. I worked with Jewel did a Roseanne Cash made-for-TV movie, and so they redid a whole bunch of the June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash songs, and she was singing. So I went into the studio and worked with her on those, and there were some other things. But yeah, that's all about placement of music within film and television,
sync licenses and stuff. So so what's taking up most of your time now? Are you still pretty much just engineering and producing? Like, what are you doing today?
I just got back from London not long ago, working with Elton on a project. He's finishing up 2 musicals, one that's going to Broadway and one that's going to London on the West End.
So that relationship is now how long?
31 years.
Awesome. Amazing. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's just the dream thing to do as an engineer.
I didn't ask this question. Did you ever sit in like on a concert? Did you get to play?
I didn't get to play.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Because I'm a piano player. And
Right. And he's a piano player.
They got one.
Yeah.
The Elton band has a piano player.
Maybe
Elton and the Johns.
one of those days that Elton might have wanted to stand at the mic and
That actually is kind of his thing, isn't it?
There is a guy out in L.A. His name is Adam Chester. He's kind of like the Elton stand-in. Like whenever they do. Whenever they rehearse the band, his whole band lives out in L.A. And so whenever they rehearse before a tour, Elton doesn't necessarily have to be there for the rehearsals. So Adam comes in and he's basically Elton for the rehearsals. And then like for the last day or two, Elton will come in and they'll run through a few things and kind of get the show together. Right. Now, Adam did get to play live during the Dodger Stadium show that Disney aired. There was Elton had some guest artists, and so Elton went up to the front of the stage to sing with them, and Adam got to sit in and play the piano. He got to essentially be Elton for a couple of songs.
Right on. Thank you for making my question not seem completely stupid.
No.
They got a guy for that.
But that's it's cool. I mean, I have gotten to play his piano many times.
Right
when we're getting things together and the band is getting sounds. I may go in and sit at the piano and play something real quick. But it's always him.
Right on.
A saying came to my mind. I was like, "Ooh, I shouldn't say that." Say it off camera. All right, so rapid fire. So I'm gonna just hit you with these questions. Try not to think about them. Whatever pops up in your head. All right. If you want to expound, you can.
What is the meaning of life? That's what.
I know. All right. What's your biggest insecurity? Shout out to Rob Hardy. Okay. First question. You get one do-over in life. What would it be?
One do-over. Oh my gosh. Dude, I've won a Grammy. What do I need to do over?
What else does he want to do?
There it is. Shout out to Naris.
No, it's I don't.
It's actually amazing if you can't think of one though. That is dope.
Not to get too philosophical on things, but it's like the mistakes in life that you've made that you think you might want to go back and do over. You've learned more from those, so those have been more beneficial to me than the things that I just immediately found success at. Mm-hmm. So, if I go back and fix a mistake I made, I would not have learned that lesson, and who knows what would have happened. So,
thank you for that clip.
Right on.
All right. Choose. You get one superpower. You can travel through time, read people's thoughts, or be invisible.
Read people's thoughts.
Yeah, that'd be scary. That'd be scary. Why? All right. You said why?
Why? I needed you to expound on that one. I need to know why.
Because I had to pick one? Why
okay.
not?
All right, cool.
Of the three.
That's the one I go with. Okay.
Of the three. Well, it's like you get into a situation, a lot of times you're unsure if this person, you can trust this person, if this person is a good person. Sometimes it's hard, especially in this industry, with some people who might have some unscrupulous business practices and ways they do things. It's if you know exactly what they were thinking, then you would be able to avoid
save a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of that shit.
Watch American Greed enough, you'll be like, yeah, I want to read.
Understood.
Yeah. All right, you can have dinner with anyone, dead or alive. Who would it be? Anyone in history, dead or alive. Who would it be?
Barack Obama.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think he was probably one of the most inspirational people of this century so far.
Well,
that'd be a lot of questions.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of questions, actually.
What would question number one be if you could ask Barack some questions at dinner?
Will you give me a tax extension?
Boom.
Yeah.
No, it just kind of. I don't know that I would necessarily have a set question that I would have.
Just kind of be in the room?
Yeah, just being in the room. Just, when you break bread, conversations happen organically and naturally. And it just,
That actually, I know we got more rapid fire. I have slow rapid fire all the way down.
You really have.
The cool thing
Slow
about
fire.
being associated with some of the people you associate with is you have access to the White House correspondence dinners and stuff. You've never been able to snag a ticket to one of those ever?
No.
Okay.
I've never been invited.
I was just asking. I got some friends who played talk box for one artist. Hey man, you want to go to correspondence dinner? And they get to go to all this cool stuff because they have a relationship with some artist. So something.
I've never sought to try and take advantage of relationships in that way.
Okay.
Elton has his Oscars AIDS Foundation party every year. Mm-hmm. I've never asked to, I'm sure I could go if I said, hey, I'd love to go. He'd be like, okay, but I've never asked to go.
Okay.
Because I know with that, it's a ticket that he would be giving me, and they charge people to go to that. Yeah. They charge a lot. So that's money that's not going to the AIDS Foundation.
Right.
I just, it's like me enjoying myself is not the purpose of that evening. They have a greater thing. So I never try to take advantage.
You're very much a stay in and enjoy my lane.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. That's super noble. I'm even more of a fan now because those real human responses like that. Everyone at some point looks to get something in it for themselves, and to hear that is.
I would say one of the coolest environments that I have been to around him was when he first got married in London. Mm-hmm. Back when it was just a civil union at that point, but he had his wedding and he had the reception, and my wife and I were invited to that, so we go.
Right on.
And you talk about the celebrities in that room.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. It's like you turn around. I was like, oh, that's Michael Caine right there next to me, and there's
Princess Diana. Hey, how are you?
Helena Bonham Carter, and And there were a couple of royals there.
I'm sure,
but I wasn't familiar with.
To know
There's a
them.
lot of royals.
I hope I didn't put my foot in my mouth. I don't know if that was before or after she passed, so that might have been a wah 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 moment.
That was after, but
sorry. Okay, not to be
but
insensitive.
still,
that was completely a faux pas on my part.
But yeah, that was that was I'm sitting at the table and Ozzy Osbourne's sitting right there, at the next table right next to me. So it was kind of one of those
surreal moment.
one of those chill moments that was like, man, this is this is a cool thing.
That's crazy.
So
all right, we already asked that one. The artist you love to work with. So wait, Beck. Yep. All right, so last one, and I asked that. If you didn't do music, what would you have done?
if I had to come up with an idea, I would say it would probably be a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll be honest, I
Entertainment
figured
law
that because
in
that was the
particular?
example you gave. You gave an Emory
school.
law thing, and I was like, okay, there's some law stuff in here somewhere.
Would it be entertainment law, you think, or
Probably litigation.
interesting? Wow.
To get some of that energy out from the wife on some other people.
I think I would enjoy myself making arguments in front of people, in front of a jury,
Right on.
rather than looking at a contract. Now, this is for someone who's not a lawyer. The lawyer may be listening, going, "Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, it don't work that way."
This
little
ain't
man.
Matlock, buddy.
Yeah, this ain't Law and Order,
Right. Or Suits. Let's bring it up to
there you go.
current.
Yeah.
It's not Suits.
So, but I may be a lawyer.
All right. Are you active on social media?
I have social media.
Just not active.
I mean, once in a while I'll post something, but I'm not driven by it.
What is it?
At Matt Still
Boom.
Nice and easy.
Easy. Yeah.
Nice and easy. Just at Matt Still. There it is.
on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That's,
Okay. So if anyone wants to know what's going on with Matt Still, they pretty much need to know you and have your number.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hey, I am not mad at it, to be honest with you. I'm not mad at it at all.
Yeah.
All right, Johnny, you know.
Just Johnny Vaughn, JUSTJONYVAN.
Y'all know what it is. Stone Stafford at what? It's stonestafford.com. I do it every single time. That's my email, Stone at Stone Stafford. Website is stonestafford.com. But anyway, you're here for the podcast, not me. So that is lifeonpodcast.com. Everything. You can either listen to the episodes on your streaming platforms or you can watch it on YouTube. All this stuff is there. The last 10 episodes are going to be up there. Matt, we appreciate you having on. This was fun.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And I love it when I learn new stuff
Yeah.
from the guests. That's always great.
I love it when I
That's
can do
amazing.
this like internally for like an hour.
And Matt and I, we go way back. You know, what I mean, I see him peppered. Every once in a while, we'll bump across each other.
I'm sure we crossed our paths over at Bosstown back in the day.
Oh yeah, we did. When I was in a group, I know for a fact you were over there. I was in because Boys Men were there, and Numo would come in, and I'm sure you were there. You had to be there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I had hair down to my waist at that point.
yeah, you probably were. You probably were there.
Yeah. I had a ponytail, hair down to my waist.
That is hilarious.
So,
I used to have a shag.
Yeah.
Man, we appreciate you guys. So look, granted, we didn't hit our 1 million subscribers in 2023, but we're not giving up. You're not giving up on us either. So just like and subscribe us and tell a friend. We're just going to leave it at that. Show your love. We appreciate y'all. We will be back in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Peace out.
So back to what I was saying. What I was saying.